So these are our B1 Battle Driods. There's also some clone drivers here. These are all going to get sprayed in Wraithbone. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to take them outside and give them a good coating of that. Back in a moment. Hello and welcome back to Party of the Geeks. You're joining me for a painting video. Today we're going to be painting the B1 Battle Driods from Star Wars Shatterpoint. And we've already primed these. I've primed these in a Wraithbone. The base have been primed along with the rest of the models that I was painting. So they've actually had an undercoat of Chaos Black and then a spray on top of Grey Seer. For the bases, I could have easily just painted them in Mechanicus or any other colour really. So this is how I'm going to paint them. Rather than just keeping them plain, I'm going to add little security markings for security droids just to make them look a little bit different, make it look a bit less like just the rank and file. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to start with some Memphiston red base from Games Workshop. I'm going to paint some details in that. Once that's dried, I'm going to move on and I'm going to use Skeleton Horde. And I'm also going to thin that down a little bit with some water. Just to make it slightly thinner and make sure it doesn't pool in some of the recesses. Once that's dried, I'm going to be doing a dry brush with Screaming Skull. I'm also going to do some rudimentary highlighting as well of any areas that the dry brush hasn't really caught on. After that's done, I'm going to be painting the weapons. I'm going to do those in Black Templar. Once that's done, I'm going to be doing some highlights on it. I'm going to be trying out this for the first time. This is a Bold White Titanium Acrylic Pro. I've been told it's pretty good. This will be the first time I'm going to use it. Now I'm either going to use this straight on or I'm going to actually mix it in with a little bit of metal to make, because they are robots at the end of the day, the droids. I'm going to mix it in with some of this Helio metal colour. It's one of my favourite colours. These are air paints, but you can just paint them on as well. They're quite thin and they do mix quite well with other paints. So I might either just do this or a mix of these. We'll find out when we get to it basically. And then, depending on how they look, I might add some chipping on with some model colour Hull Red. So we'll see. That's subject to how they look at the end though. So let's make a start. Okay, so the difference between B1 Battle Driods and security droids are the markings on them. Same with most of the B1s. The only real difference are the markings that are there. The security droids have reddish markings on. To be honest, I was toying with the idea of using red leather. It's quite, so it's got sort of dark, not dark, reddish, leathery tone to it. Sort of a terracotta as well. Tuscarora fur would be quite close to that from Games Workshop. But I've decided, because I'm going to be washing over the top of it, the colouring might look a bit washed out. So, and because these are just a version, and I can paint them any colour really, I'm just going to go for a brighter red. It will help them stand out a little bit on the table, I think. So there is we're going to be painting the back of the head, where the little antennae are. We're also going to be painting a little bit around the neck. We're going to be painting the area around the shoulder joint. We're going to be painting half of the shoulder there. And we're also going to be painting a line down underneath the arm. And I'm also going to be painting a line across. Just a short line there. Just to mark off some of the markings. I've seen different markings online for the Battle Droids. But I think those will make it look quite good. Make it stand out from a normal plain Battle Droid. So let's start off with that, shall we? Okay, so now we've added on our red markings. Like I said, online there are different versions of the markings, but those ones we're going with. Next up we're going to use Skeleton Horde from Games Workshop. This is a contrast paint and it's thin, but we want to make sure it is thinly applied. So we are going to be applying it. Unlike contrast, we're going to be doing it quite slowly. We want to make sure it doesn't pool in any of the recesses. I want to make sure that we go over everything, even the red parts. Because red's good to be shaded with either something like Carbo Crimson, which is red, or browns like Agrax, so from Sepia. If you want your reds to look dirtier, you can always shade it with a brown, and this is kind of a brown shade, a very light brown. So we're going to paint this over the top of the reds we've just put on as well. So I'm going to go ahead and try and get that kind of coverage. So I'll be back once I've done them all. Okay, so while the skeleton dries, and we need it to dry fully, we're going to do some work on the bases. So we have this base here, which could either be sort of grey slate. I'm going to do it in metal colours, just for fun. I'm going to be using for Helio's metal colour gunmetal grey. Again, this is an air paint, but it works just as well with a brush. I'm going to give it a covering that to start with. With this base, I'm going to leave these as sort of stony slate, but I'm going to darken them up a little bit. I'm going to be using Dark Reaper for that, Games Workshop colour. And the rest of the base, I'm going to be doing a sort of a earthy, sandy type colour. I haven't decided how dark or light I'm going to go with that just yet, but I'm going to start with being brown over the top of the undercoat. So I'll be back once I've done those. Okay, so just to brighten up this dark slate colour, what I'm going to do, I'm going to mix in some Administration Grey into the Dark Reaper. Probably 50-50, but I still want it to be quite dark, so to give that dark bluey slate appearance. So I'm going to play around with that. Probably 2/3 Dark Reaper and then probably 1/3 Administratum. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and just lighten that up slightly, but I still want to have that dark slate look to it. Okay, so I've lined it up a little bit and I've left the lines in just to give it more of a rough texture to it. I don't want it to be just one solid colour. What I'm actually going to do is just some edge blending just with the unmixed Administratum Grey, just to get those edges to really be sharper than they actually are. Because I'm going to be doing a wash over the top of this and I want them to stand a little bit after the wash is gone. So I'm going to finish that off now. Okay, so we're going to now add a dry brush to the Battle Driods. That's using some Screaming Skull from Games Workshop. And you can use other dry paints from Games Workshop, any paint really to dry brush with. The key is just making sure that there is the minimum amount of paint on the brush, and making sure that your motions generally are against the solid surfaces of the model. It's always best to just err on the side of caution with dry brush. You don't want to do too much. And we'll be doing it over the red as well, as you can see there on the shoulder. It now brings out the shoulder a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on the models. So now we've done the initial dry brush, we're going to paint the guns. That's going to be done just with a covering of Black Templar. And we're just going to put that onto the gun areas and that's it. We're not going to cover any of the model with that. And at the same time I'm going to actually be using some Agrax Earthshade on both of these bases, the metal one and just to make it look a bit more grimy. So let's go ahead and do that. because I've done these panels in a metallic colour, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some Secret Weapons engine rust. And I'm just going to paint it in little recesses where there's like little dots, or like sort of, even the idea of like rivets or something. I'm going to paint them along the edge just to give it a bit more interest than just a blank metal plate. With this I'm going to give it a dry brush of the Screaming Skull like I did with the B1 Battle Driods, just to bring up some of that colour again, and I'll be back in a moment. While the guns are still drying, I'm going to also do the next bit on the bases, which is to add in some Athonian Camel shade. This is just like a little bit of a colour change. I'm just going to use a little bit of this old spongy type stuff that you get in packing things in blister packs. You can use anything that's spongy really. Just want to get a little bit on it. I'm just going to add just some colour variations on the rather flat surfaces. Just to, I don't want it to like it's brushed on, that's why I'm using this. I'm just going to use the less painted end just to mix some of that in. It's just to give it a little bit more of a colour interest. I'm going to do it on both parts of this base, both the colours. Spread it out a little bit, just like that. And then I'm actually going to do the same on this, just to make it look like maybe there's some little bits of mossy area that's appeared, but I'm not going to do it quite as much. It's just to again break up that singular colour that's in the okay. Yeah, you can paint bases however you want, it's just how I'm doing. So these are nearly dry, so the next thing we're definitely going to do is we're going to test out this bold titanium white, and I'm going to test it out plain, and then I might mix in some of this, but let's have a go. So that is the titanium white on its own. It's just a little bit too bright for what I'm trying to get at. So I've mixed in 50% of the aluminum, and it might give it just that metallic feel. I'm just using the edge of a flat brush, use the edge of any brush, but because these are quite sharp surfaces, I'm just using this. I'm going to just put a little bit on the top of that. I think the gun's pretty good actually, let's have a look. Yeah, I'm just going to put a small line on top of the gun, just add a bit of almost glare. Again, just to give it the idea there's something metallic there. So I'm going to go over the models to get in some of the recesses. I might use a normal brush as well, and just highlight some of the upper areas with this, like the upper arms, where the fingers are. Don't want to do too much. Probably along the backpack, tops of those. Do a bit on the top of the head. Maybe if I just get that off the brush, just go down his nose sort of area. Just highlight that too. So just that kind of thing. Now that's done, we're going to take some model colour Old Red, and we're going to do a little bit of chipping onto the actual battle droids. Make sure that's nice and mixed. And then we're going to use the similar method, tearing a little bit more of this stuff off. I don't want loads of this on, so I'm just going to get a little bit there. This is the case of just doing some little battle damage or paint scrapes. Just don't want to overdo it. Put them in around the front, maybe a little bit there, just to break up those big areas of flat colour. That's about it, that's all I want to do on that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that on the others. I've done that. On some of the areas where I've done the chipping, I'm just going to paint a little white edge. Just using the bold white. Just to make those look like proper paint chips. So with the smallest amount imaginable of paint, we're just going to sort of highlight the battle damage a little bit. Anywhere I just feel like it needs some more paint chipping highlighted. So I'm going to go ahead and finish those. So there we go. So I've also used that white, just adding a few more extreme highlights in a few areas. And that is the battle droids pretty much done. And what we're going to do now is finish off the bases. So I'm going to give this a light dry brush of aluminum or aluminium, depending on where you are in the world. And this is just a light dry brush over the top just to bring out the edges. And then we're going to use some different colours on these as well, so I'll come back in a second. Okay, so just to bring up the edges a little bit, and now what I'm actually going to use is this, which is a interesting little rust solution. So basically we paint this on, and this isn't really like paint, this is like an effect, and I don't want quite that much on my brush. I'm just going to put this in a few areas, and what happens with this is once it meets the oxygen and starts drying, it starts to change colour just a little bit. And this is just to make more than one rust colour effect on it. And again, just add a bit of interest to an otherwise flat base. Put a bit there, and a little bit there. Some around these areas here. And this adds in just some more colour variations. And I'll be interested to see exactly what it looks like when it dries. Do some little dots of rust here and there. Right, so I'm going to leave that as it is. I don't want to go over the top with that. And we're now going to use this one. It's the same make. This is a moss colour. Let's make sure it's shaken up. I haven't opened this one before. This is the first time I've used the moss colour, but it should do a similar sort of thing. It starts off as one colour, and what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to add this where these stones meet. It looks like there might be some moisture held in the ground. I'm just going to add this onto here, and we're going to see what this looks like. once it dries out as well. I'm just going to fill that out a little bit. It's like it's growing out of these edges. I don't really want to do too much for this. I will add a little bit more between these two bits. And this is more of an experiment to see how this turns out. There we go. That's what I'm going to do with that, because I'm going to add some tufts on as well. So I'll bring a little bit of green colour variation onto that. So let's wait for this to dry and then I'll come back. So there it is, the dried moss, slightly shiny, no problem, and the rust. So the next thing to do is stick the B1 Battle Driods onto the bases. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to be adding on to this base some of these tufts, and maybe, let's see how it looks. I might add one of these on as well, just see how the colours look before I add them on. So this is Geek Gaming Scenics, and this is Games of Graphs. So I'm going to go and finish up, and we'll come back with some finished Battle Droids. There we go, and I finished off the rim of the base just with some Dark Reaper, which is the same as the Separatist models that I've got for Legion. So let's have a look. It's still drying slightly at the part there, but there we go. That's one set of Battle Droids, and that's the other set though. There we go. I have pushed this one slightly off centre because I want to see if I can find like a little crate or something I can find to put on this base, just to give it a bit of extra colour and just something else on the base. Like we've had the little tufts there. I'd like something just a little bit more three-dimensional on this base, just to contrast with all that metal underneath. So I'm going to have a look, see if I can either 3D print a small crate or a bit of MacGuffin, bit of destroyed battle droid or something. Just I can put on that base, it's got a different colour to it, which is why I've left that bit a little bit clearer rather than putting the droids there. But I'm quite happy with that. Yeah, I think I've done pretty quick. That was my goal. So hope you've enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more. In the next video I'm probably going to start painting Kalani to lead these guys. So see you for that.